going on in the family law world?
Just busy, unfortunately. Fortunately busy, tons of work, tons of people that need help out there. And I'm blessed to have been as busy as ever, put it that way.
What's cool is you were our actual first guest ever on Law Have Mercy. And I probably sent your podcast to at least 20, 30 people when they call me with family law questions. I'm like, look, Wes answered them all in this first podcast. Here you go.
Right.
Have people told you that they've heard you on the podcast?
Absolutely. 2 weeks ago, someone you had sent came to my office, retained me, and he's like, I saw you on the podcast, and after that, that was it. I wanted you to answer my questions specifically based on how I approached your questions at the last one.
Yeah, well, we covered a lot. I think we covered divorce, some child custody stuff. We talked about I've had a lot of questions about sole custody. That was one of the things that they wanted more specifics. Sole custody is pretty difficult to get, right?
Yes, sole custody, quite difficult. A judge who is no longer on the bench here in the 15th JDC used to say you need crack cocaine, abuse with a baseball bat, straight up abandonment, serious things. So yeah, it's a totally different standard than joint custody. Sole custody is when the other party really has just visitation. They have no decision-making power. They don't have to even receive notice from the parent who has sole custody. So it's really all that bundle of rights, more or less, laying with one parent. You can get it, but it is quite difficult,
And I would imagine, look, our TikTok audience is actually I had somebody from Africa ask me a community property question. So it's a global audience. But I would imagine that the sole custody standard is pretty much universal in terms of you need something really bad in order to take some type of custody away from the other parent.
Correct. I would say in most states, especially southern states I'm most familiar with, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, it's something very serious. And usually when sole custody is given, it's in a very temporary nature. It's until the other parent can get clean drug screens or can move back into town after living out of state. Or, they might have been away for X amount of time, literally disappeared, whatever, shows back up, okay, get back involved in the kid's life. Very rarely do you get sole custody where it's ordered and it's finalized through the end, because the other parent's typically going to get a chance to make their case, come back in the child's life and have some decision.
Work their way back in,
Correct.
essentially.
Correct.
And jump some hurdles and jump through some hoops and
right.
work their way in with the court supervision.
Right. Prove to the court that you've met these certain child custody factors and that the child is deserving and you're deserving of being back in that life on a day-to-day decision-making basis.
And the reason I'm going through sole custody, I got a lot of questions about sole custody. Do you have people like go into your office where you represent the mother or the father and they want sole custody and you guys say, whoa, slow down?
Correct. Yeah. It's, I tell them, look, you have a chance, but there's no guarantee. Then sometimes I have had people, I had a lady come in 3 years ago where she knew the father didn't want to participate. She knew he just wanted out. He wanted to pay his child support, see his kids every other weekend, de minimis. And I got her sole custody because he was willing to sign off on it without a hearing. Never bucked it, never changed anything.
Yeah.
Other people that come in saying, I have this, and this. I'm saying, look, you can maybe get temporary sole custody for a while on this, but if that person fixes this issue, if they dump the bad, current boyfriend, girlfriend, if they get off of drugs, they could be worked in. The courts typically like to see a good success story.
Yeah, but look, you're a father. You probably talk to them and say, all right, I know there's some bad stuff going on, but do you really want the child not to have any contact with his father or his mother, right? I'm sure you counsel them on that too.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate because people come in there thinking it's the best thing for their kid. And I tell them, no. Child psychiatrists say both parents having something. Anyone in a parental role, kids need it. The more the merrier. It's ideal to have that parenting figure from a male perspective and a female perspective. So sometimes I do have to counsel the client, bring them down a notch, saying, look, unless this person was really bad, abusing the child, they saw him doing drugs, doing X, Y, and Z, they need to be in the kid's life, at least in some kind of way. Maybe not on a day-to-day, but on a weekend basis where they're not making doctor's appointments, signing up for school, extracurriculars, things of that nature.
One thing that we didn't spend a whole lot of time on is community property. I don't think we talked about community property, separate property, that kind of thing. I'd like to go into that in a little bit if you're down for it.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of misunderstanding when it comes to community property. And I think that's probably one of the biggest consequences of a divorce or even a marriage before the divorce is dealing with the assets when
Correct.
something happens. So I'd like to get into that in a little bit.
Sure. I mean, so basics for community property, you're kind of stuck with what you have unless you do something in advance. People always ask, okay, how can I get insurance for a divorce? How can you prepare if it happens? A prenuptial agreement, biggest thing. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. What's ours is ours. You can make it that simple where it's 3 buckets and you're putting things, you're not commingling things like that. You can also deal with spousal support to a certain degree in a prenuptial agreement as well. If people have that, they opt out of the legal regime of community property. Assets and gains is the old name.